Hello. Today we're going to be looking at 13.3, day 1 of the unit circle. And what I'm going to do here is just walk through the notes, and hopefully that'll help as you take a look at your homework for the weekend. Okay, so first thing we're going to look at is recall from our geometry class the ratios of the sides on a 30-60-90 right triangle and a 45-45-90 right triangle. And these should look familiar. Okay. On the 30-60-90, we have x as the short side, x root 3 as the long side, and 2x as the hypotenuse. So I'm going to call this one long, this one short, and this is the hypotenuse. Okay. On the 60-30-90, the next one here, this would be the short side. This would be the long side. And this would be the hypotenuse. Okay. So we're going to be looking at these on the unit circle. So I want to really get this vocabulary down of the long, the short, and the medium. Okay. The mediums come along in the 45-45 right triangle. Okay. So this would be the medium. And in the 45-45-90, those are the same lengths. Okay, so now let's take a look. If we make the hypotenuse all 1 in these right triangles, let's take a look at what that would look like. Okay, so I'm going to draw a 30-60-90. Okay, not too bad. All right, so I'm going to call this 30 right here. Okay, so then the long would be this, root 3 over 2. The short side would be the vertical, that would be 1/2. And the hypotenuse, we said, is 1. Okay, and if you want to do the math, you can plug it in and figure out those sides. If you plugged in 1 for 2x as the hypotenuse, you'd get those sides. Okay, now if we switch the orientation of this and make it a 60-30-90, okay, and so now I'm on a 60 down here. Now this is the short side, kind of the X movement, the side-to-side movement. The vertical movement would be the long side. And the hypotenuse is 1, like we said. Okay, again, looking at the 30-60-90, we have the long is the X value, or the side-to-side movement, and the short is the Y value, up and down. That's the 1/2. When we orient it with the 60-30-90, we're looking at the short being the X movement, side to side, and the long being the Y movement, up and down. Okay, now let's look at a 45-45-90. We'll see if I can draw a decent one. Yeah, looks okay. All right, so here we go, 45. Okay, now on this one, if the hypotenuse is 1, the sides are root 2 over 2. And we could just memorize that, or you could plug it back into the equations above and solve for x. If you made x root 2 equal to 1 and you rationalize the denominators, you get the root 2 over 2 for the medium sides going up or side to side and up and down. Okay, let's move down to the unit circle. We're just going to touch on this today. We'll get back to this this model right here later. But what we're looking at here, this is a 45. And as you can see, we've got the X movement and the Y movement up here, both being the same, and those would be root 2 over 2. So the X and Y coordinates would be root 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. That would be the X coordinate going this way, the Y coordinate going that way. If the hypotenuse is 1, which it is on the unit circle, then the cosine is the opposite, or excuse me, the adjacent, this side, over 1. So that would just be root 2 over 2, because root 2 over 2 over 1 is the same as root 2 over 2. The sine would be the opposite over the hypotenuse, which is root 2 over 2 over 1. So again, we'll get to that later. We can also do the same thing with that. This would be a 60-degree angle here. Okay, and we'll talk about that again later. That'll be like day 2, day 3. Okay, we talked about rotation on a circle is angles in trigonometry. Okay, so what I want you to be able to do on day 1 here is fill this out just on the degrees. We'll talk about the patterns in radians later. But if you can see this, you see that the 30-degree angle right there, okay, has the same color as the 150, has the same color as the 210, has the same color as the 330. If you'll see that, the reference angle of all of those is 30 degrees. Okay? Just like for the 45 here, okay, those are all the same color, and those are all have the same reference angle of 45 degrees, and the 60 degrees all have the same color and all have the reference angle of 60 degrees. Okay, we'll talk about the 90 degree and the 180 and 270 and back to 0 or 360 later. Okay, but for now we're looking at those 30, the 45, and the 60 and seeing that those all have the same reference angle with the same colors as they go around. Right now, I expect you to be able to actually go around the unit circle, filling in 30, 45, 60, 90, 120, 135, 150, 180, 210, all the way around the circle. You should be able to do that. Okay, so let's take that and move up here a little bit. Okay, so this is what I want you to be able to do for your homework this weekend. Okay, I would like you, as you see here, we have reference angle of 30 degrees right down here. Okay, and this is what I'm talking about. Reference angle 30 degrees. Okay, so let's draw that reference angle of 30 degrees on these and talk about where we're going to be at. Okay, that would be the 30-degree reference angle, 30 right there. Okay, this one also has a reference angle of 30 right there. Okay, but what is that angle based on rotation? Well, that is 150. Okay, and then this one also has a reference angle of 30. Okay, and that is our 210. Okay, and this angle right here also has a reference angle of 30 degrees, and that is our 330. Okay, so for this weekend, what I'd like you to be able to fill out is our quadrant, our angle in degrees, and our x and y coordinate. Okay, so those are the 3 boxes I'd like you to be able to fill out. And I'm going to help you do that right now. Okay, so let's take a look at this. We'll get into our quadrant here. Okay, and our quadrant 1, right, is our first one that we're seeing. So that would be quadrant 1, and then we're talking quadrant 2, and then I'll move this thing down here, and then we'll talk quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. Okay, what are those angle measures? Well, in quadrant 1, we're looking at degree angle of 30 degrees. In quadrant 2, we see it, we've got 150. In quadrant 3, we're at a 210 is our reference angle to the nearest x-axis. And at 330, or excuse me, at our quadrant 4, we're at 330, and that has the reference angle of 30 degrees. Okay, again, we'll get to that radians later. We'll talk about that on Monday. Okay, now I want to get into the XY coordinates here. Okay, so we're looking at our 30, 60, 90 right triangle here. Okay, let's get that like that. Good. And then up here. Okay, let me get that straight if I can. Come on. Pick me up. Yeah, it's not giving it to me. Oh well. Okay, so off of that 30 degree, we have our long side is going to be root 3 over 2. That is our movement in x. Okay, we're trying to find this coordinate right there, and we need to move in x and move in y. we've got long side and then short side. The short side is 1/2. Okay, so those are our coordinates all the way up and down this x and y value, these x and y values right here. Okay, so let me move into, let's move this into right here. Let's see if I can, yeah. Okay, so the x and y value on the 30 is, in quadrant 1, is going to be √3/2 and 1/2. And those are both going to be positive, okay, because you're in quadrant 1. Now, as we move down to quadrant 2, now we're talking that 150 angle. Now to get to here, let me get out of that. Now to get to here, okay, to get to this, we are going to go -x, +y. Okay, so let me bring this back down here. So we've got a -√3/2 and a positive 1/2. That's in quadrant 2. Okay, and sorry, the font's not great here. I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Okay, now let's go to quadrant 3. Quadrant 3 is a negative, right? So we've got our okay, so we've got our -√3/2 and our -1/2. That's quadrant 3. Okay, and quadrant 4, what we're looking at is trying to get to this coordinate right there, which we will go +x, negative, and then -y to get there. So we're going to go right into there, and we're going to say, okay, +x, so we're talking √3/2 and a -y, -1/2. Okay, so those are the coordinates of these positions. Okay, so the coordinates here, 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 and here. Okay, on reference angles of 30, they're all the same. √3/2 is the x value, 1/2 is the y value. Now, the coordinate is going to, or excuse me, the quadrant is going to dictate whether we're talking positive or negative x and y values. Okay? Let's move on to the 45. Okay, and I'm not going to do the whole thing here, but I'm just going to guide you. And then the 60 should just be the opposite of the 30. So I'm going to take you into quadrant 1 of the 45 and quadrant 1 of the 60-degree reference angles. Okay, so we're talking 45-degree reference angles. So we're looking at this angle right there. We're looking at this angle right there. And what we're trying to do is find those angle measures and those coordinates. Okay, so this angle measure would be at 45 degrees. Okay, over in quadrant 2, as we move this way like this, okay, this is going to be a 135. And then as we keep moving here to here, that's a 225. Okay, and as we keep moving around to here, we have a, what, 315? Okay, so those are our quadrants, or excuse me, those are our angle measures as we go around the quadrants. Now, what are the coordinates of those positions? Okay, so what's the coordinate here, 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 and here? Well, the x and y values are all going to be the same. They're just going to maybe have different signs because they're in different quadrants. Okay, so what are the coordinates for the 45? We'll take a look at a 45, 45, 90 with a hypotenuse of 1. Okay, so our hypotenuse is 1. That's our unit circle. Okay, so we're looking at the √2 over 2 on both the x and y coordinate. Okay, x going here, y going there. Okay, so in quadrant 1, we're looking at an angle measure of 45. Okay, and our coordinate is √2. 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. Now, in quadrant 2, we would have a negative root 2 over 2 and a positive root 2 over 2. The x value would be negative, the y value would be positive. But all these coordinates on any 45-degree reference angle is going to be root 2 over 2. Okay, real quick. We'll go to the 60-degree reference angles. Okay, so now we're looking at right there, 60, right there, 60-degree reference angle, right there, a 60-degree reference angle, and right here, a 60-degree reference angle. So the actual angles are going to be 60, and then we've got 90 plus the 30, 120. Okay, and then we've got, what would it be? It would be 270 minus 30, so 250. Not 240, sorry. Thank you. Okay, and then right here would be the 300. Okay, so those are all 60-degree reference angles. Okay, and again, that's 240 right there. Sorry about my handwriting. Okay, so what does a 60-degree look like, and what are the coordinates? Okay, so a 60-degree looks like this. Okay, that's the 60-degree angle, and the coordinates are short side, 1/2, long side, the y value, root 3 over 2. Okay. So again, for homework, you have that sheet, and you're going to be filling out the quadrant, the angle measure, and the XY coordinate for your 60-degree reference angles, your 45-degree reference angles, and your 30-degree reference angles. Okay, thank you. Good luck.